All right, I think we should all be live now. Hopefully everyone is tuning in. Everyone can respond that Justin and I are equal volumes, perhaps. Justin, would you like to say a word?
Oh, I would have to also be talking for that to be possible. So this is the volume that I am speaking at, and the volume Blair is speaking at sounds something like this.
Oh, I am now speaking like this. Can everyone hear both of us at an equal volume? My sound controls makes it difficult for me to tell what is happening.
It's okay if I'm a little louder, people.
All right.
That's just how I am.
I'm already hoarse. Okay, great. We're going to get started. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 624, recorded on Wednesday, June 21st, 2017. Summertime Science. Tonight on TWIS, we will fill your head with scared mountain lions, bad medicine, and a wooden foot. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Science is often characterized poorly in fiction. The occasional tool to push plot feasibility, the source of a superhero's power, the unfair advantage of a supervillain, the cause of a world-devastating fill-in-the-blank that was the result of science going too far. And let us not forget that science has always gone too far for the fictional sensibility of any time. Instead, the way that fictitious days are often won, that mysteries are unveiled, that solutions are found to make a better world, are with violence, followed by a car chase, followed by more violence, and the occasional interpersonal dispute solved along the way, usually through violence. The real world, though, is full of heroes, finding solutions, solving problems, building, healing, discovering, and all of that, just so that we may bring you another episode of This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you. Oh, wait, Kiki's not here. Well, good science to you, Blair.
It's just me. Happy Day of Science to you as well, Justin. It is the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of This Week in Science, and we have a great show ahead. We have tons of science news. I brought a whole bunch of Blair's Animal Corner with old deer, old monkeys, a wooden toe, board games for science. What did you bring, Justin?
Let's see. I've got some fishy stuff, some food stuff, some questionable skeptical stuff, and a new spin on tetrapods.
Ooh, a new spin on tetrapods. Very good. Okay, well, before we jump into those, we have our new segment called What Has Science Done for Me Lately? Our latest comes from minion Joe Cloutier, and he says, "Hello, Dr. Kiki. My wife, Marjory, and I are longtime listeners who absolutely love your show and decided to check in from Tigard, Oregon, to share how science has helped us lately." Oh, thanks. In October, my wife and I participated in an event where she ran a half marathon a day for a week, each in a different state in the Southeast.
What?
Yeah.
A half marathon a day?
Yeah. And
oh my gosh.
I did the same, running a marathon in each state. A couple weeks ago, we repeated this, but this time in the Northeast. Oh, okay. That is 14 marathons or half marathons completed in just over 7 months.
Wow.
A few decades ago, it was thought impossible that anyone, including elite athletes, could compete in even a single marathon. And now that we have regular folks like us competing in sometimes 7 a week. Modern medicine, training, exercise, diet, advanced clothing and shoes technologies are just a few of the scientific advances that have made a ridiculous goal like this attainable to regular people. It makes me wonder what incredible and impossible feat for us science will make commonplace for our children or our grandchildren. It's enough to make you misty-eyed.
Yeah.
Little smiley face. Again, that was from Minion Joe Cloutier, and from Tigard, Oregon, who apparently loves to run. Remember, everyone, we need you to write in to let us know what science has done for you lately. What does it do for your everyday life? Leave us a message on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/thisweekinscience, or email Dr. Kiki at kikifinch@gmail.com. That's again, kikifinch@gmail.com. There is a problem with her This Week in Science email. News on that, TBD. We want to fill this segment of the show with something from our Minion community every single week, so please keep them coming. Again, our Facebook page or Kiki's email address. And without further ado, let's get into some science. Justin, do you want to hear about some board games and how they might help advance conservation action?
I would love to. How is this possible?
Oh, I can't wait to tell you. So, board games, University of Michigan, and Mexican coffee farmers. How do they all fit together? Well, University of Michigan researchers actually developed a board game to teach Mexican coffee farmers the interactions between insects, fungi, and the plants on their farm, and how some of those creatures could actually provide natural pest control. So this board game was a method of teaching this kind of complex subject. I mean, food webs are really intense, and it can be a difficult thing to teach somebody who doesn't even know what a food web is, right? So it was something kind of akin to chess, but instead of queens, knights, bishops, and pawns, they did an Azteca designed chessboard, and they had tokens that represented ants, ladybugs, wasps, and flies, and it was living on this kind of stylized version of a coffee bush. The goal of the two-player game would be for each player to capture the opponent's insect tokens. So the game mimicked the relationship that the insects and the fungi had with each other. And the insects and fungi actually could help aid in the control of something called coffee rust fungus, which is another kind of fungus, which has ravaged Latin American plantations for several years and is a driver to use pesticides. So the game helps see how natural fungi, insects, and other natural pest controls could kill off this fungus without the intervention of pesticides.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they say our goal is to help farmers to continuously update their management strategies based on a better understanding of ecology of their farms. And we believe that this board game helps us to facilitate that kind of learning. And the professor in charge of this research group from University of Michigan Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology, he's operated research plots at organic coffee farms in southern Chiapas, Mexico for more than 20 years. And they've researched the ecological interactions of 9 species, including tree-nesting Azteca ants, a sessile coffee scale insect, which is an insect that doesn't move around, ladybugs, parasitic wasps, and parasitic flies. They held 14 workshops in southern Mexico for more than 100 small-scale coffee farmers. The workshops included natural history lectures, as well as quizzes to assess the value of the board game. And they found that this board game actually did make a significant impact on the farmers' understanding of this, based on people who just attended the lectures, who did not play the game, and people who supplemented the lecture by playing the game. So the game greatly improved their understanding of the interactions.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is a really cool situation where this is one of my favorite comments actually from one of the farmers is, there are so many little animals in our coffee farms that we prefer to ignore them. I had no idea there was a chain and each animal has a function and they compete.
Good knowledge to have.
Yes. Well, another farmer said, you came today to awaken our belief that our coffee farms are not 100% lost. We have defenders, ants that are struggling for us. We are very rude with them, but starting today, we are going to give ants a little bit of freedom. We won't mess with them. Just let them be there. Yeah. So board games for teaching farmers about the ecosystems on their farms.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And speaking of new ways of looking at things, or perhaps very old ways of looking at things, let's pretend for a second. Let's just pretend you lost your toe.
Ah,
Your big.
where is it?
Would this be a problem for you? What do you think?
Well, I'm not a real open toe shoe wearing kind of person,
Right.
so
Medically speaking, it probably wouldn't be a big deal.
yeah. There may be some balance issues in yoga. I'd have to do some adjustments there, strengthen the other littler toes.
Balance. That's exactly it. Big toes are a huge part of balance. The way that you can walk around, maybe with a shoe on, it'd be a little bit easier. But especially if you're barefoot without a big toe, you're toast. You're falling down left and right. Well,
Or left a lot or right a lot.
yes, exactly. Swiss Egyptologists from the University of Basel have found a 3,000-year-old wooden toe.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, a 3,000-year-old wooden tomb. It was from a female burial, and it was a priest's daughter, which I always think it's funny how they can figure out these things. A lot more of the anthropological stuff than I do. How do you think they would find out? There isn't an answer in this necessarily. They just kind of put it at face value. Yep, it was a priest's daughter. How do you think they found out it was a priest's daughter?
I guess the records and the family tombs in Egypt, it's probably not too hard. They probably got a whole so-and-so begot so-and-so who begot somebody else.
Right.
Probably
So
a
you think
written
it's
record.
good record keeping. Okay, so this 3,000-year-old priest's daughter's tomb, they found a wooden toe, and they found that it was refitted several times to fit the foot of its owner. Maybe as she grew, I don't know. They also knew the researchers newly classified the used materials and identified the methods with which they highly developed prosthesis. They produced they produced a conclusion that this was definitely one of the very first prosthetic things that they've found, and definitely one of the more technologically advanced ones than they've found that are around 2 or 3 centuries old.
Yeah, that's centuries old. We're talking 3,000
millennia, 2 or 3 millennia old. I use
Okay.
that word. Yes. So they say the technical know-how can be seen particularly well in the mobility of the prosthetic extension. So it had some movement to it, and the robust
So you could still wiggle your big toe with this prosthetic.
couldn't wiggle it, but it would move as you walked. Right.
Nice.
So it would have flexion there, and the robust structure of the belt strap that attached it to the foot. Yeah. The fact that their prosthesis was made in such a laborious and meticulous manner indicates that the owner valued a natural look, aesthetics, and wearing comfort, and that she was able to count on highly qualified specialists to provide this.
Yeah. Of course, we are talking about the people that built the pyramids.
Right.
Probably some decent craftsmen in there amongst the ranks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
And probably a lot of open-toed shoe wear. I wonder how the toe was lost. I imagine some.
It was still on a foot, Justin.
No, not the wooden one.
Oh, her original, the OG toe.
So, yeah, the original toe. I'm picturing a large block getting dropped on.
Maybe,
maybe that's something that happened a lot.
You know what though? They said that it was refitted several times. It's possible that was actually because it was due to gangrene or something like that, an infection, and that actually she periodically lost more and more of her foot. I would say that's probably what happened. Some sort of flesh-eating bacteria, gangrene or something.
I would argue that probably the first time they fitted the prosthesis, it wasn't that successful, and that it was more a learning as you go kind of a thing.
Maybe.
And that would be the reason for all the adjustments that they can see. That would be my guess.
We weren't there, so unless we can go back 3,000 years, it's pretty different. Exactly.
Soon, but I think once we can, we'll be exploring other things.
So, speaking of medicine, do you have a story for us?
Oh, do I ever?
Oh, yeah?
This is where did I put my stories today? Oh, here we go. To tackle serious flaws in the creation, dissemination, and implementation of medical evidence is the plan set out by experts from the British Medical Journal, Oxford University Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine. And what they're calling for is more evidence-based medicine. Not surprising. Their manifesto, as it's being called here in the article, for evidence-based medicine sets out steps required to develop trustworthy evidence. It's an open invitation to contribute and join a movement towards better evidence for better healthcare. Too many research studies are poorly designed or executed, argues Professor Carl Hennigan, editor-in-chief of the journal Evidence-Based Medicine, which is a editorial within the BMJ's editor-in-chief under Dr. Fiona Goodley, who's going to show up here in a minute. Too much of the resulting research evidence is withheld or disseminated only piecemeal, they add. And as the volume of clinical research activity has grown, the quality of evidence has often gotten worse, which has compromised medicine itself and the ability to provide affordable, effective, high-value care for patients. As a result, there's a host of organizations that have shown up to help clinicians unpick what evidence means and offer advice on how they should act. And then Hennigan here again arguing, these too are beset with problems such as untrustworthy guideline production, regulatory failings, and delays in the withdrawal of harmful drugs. So even those sort of organizations that have shown up in the middle, which I can only imagine are largely funded by pharmaceutical companies. I'm just guessing. Or they could be patient support organizations too. But I think both of those are going to be perhaps overly optimistic because they want things to work.
Right, of course. Well, so there's a few things when you're working on human medicine, right? There's the desire for things to work, of course, by the company that's designing that medicine, but also by the people who want to get better. There's a massive, massive, massive placebo effect. So unless you have good sample sizes and good controls, there's a huge opportunity for placebos to take over your study, right? A placebo effect. And on top of that, how do you properly get a good sample size and get a good control when you're working with human beings?
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult. Absolutely.
There's a lot of us out there, but we're also busy.
We're busy and we don't like to, take gambles with untested medicine. What really I think would be the key here is that if you recognize there are specific medicines where the methodology behind their testing might be flawed, you just take new data from the people who are currently using it.
That's part of it. So okay. So here he said they go on the manifesto itself. This large document. I'm assuming it's a large document because you don't call like a 3-page paper a manifesto, right?
A manifesto makes a sound when you slap it on the table.
Yeah, it's a thud when you put that down, right? Developed by people engaged at all points in the research process, patients and the public. It identifies 9 steps towards more trustworthy evidence. These include expanding the role of patients, health professionals, policymakers in the actual research, policymakers in research, reducing questionable research practices, biases, and conflicts of interest, ensuring drug and device regulation is robust, transparent, and completely independent from the industries that they are regulating, and producing better usable clinical guidelines, which is also, all this research takes place and all the effort is on that research itself, on the development of, say, a drug or device. And then there's this whole, how do you communicate the information the best way to the actual doctor? They acknowledge that tackling these issues will take time, resources, and effort, but says the focus will be on the tools and strategies most effective at delivering change. Quote, a voice so that we can all work together to improve healthcare using better quality evidence. So, yeah, healthcare is a hugely expensive thing if looked at collectively. So anything that you can do to make that system more efficient, make that research to actual clinical healthcare more effective, that's got to be worth whatever they're asking for to run this.
And I think it's also a good time to mention that whenever somebody does statistical analysis of previous studies, those are important pieces of science. They might not be as flashy. They might not be things that people think will earn them their PhD. They might not be things that will make the headlines, but they're so important. I've brought up, I can't remember how many times I've brought up since we talked about it on the show, that statistical analysis of the climate change denial papers and how they were unable to repeat results and statistical flaws and all these types of things. And nobody's heard about it because it's not flashy. It doesn't have this panache of new findings tell us, right? But it's such an important part of science to look back on previous studies, previous clinical trials, make sure your double-blind study was actually double-blind, make sure your sample size was good, make sure everything was statistically significant. It's such an important part of science.
Right. And part of that, though, is chances are only about 6% of the people that you talk to, likely, you, Blair, thought that was anything other than, well, of course.
No, actually, quite surprising, because if people are still running around saying 97% of scientists, 97% of scientists, did you hear? It's only 97. It's just 90. But it's 97% of scientists. But that actually doesn't mean anything if the 3% are not replicable, right?
But I'm talking about the 6%. So this is on the tail feathers of the United States pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. A new Cornell University study finds that labels matter when it comes to the acceptance of climate science. The U.S. public doubts the existence of global warming more than it doubts climate change.
Wait, say it again?
The U.S. public doubts the existence of global warming more than it doubts climate change.
Okay, I have a question, because those are actually two different things.
Well, are they?
No,
I don't think they are.
Yes, they are. Global warming is an element of climate change. Global warming is the rise in global temperatures. Climate change is all of the stuff that happens as a result of more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Okay. So they are two separate things. They're related, but probably in this article, they're treating them like synonyms. Is that right?
So, and it turns out,
I just want to mention that.
It turns out when they looked across this poll and it's, looked at ages and genders and all the rest of it, turns out republicanism is the thing driving this effect, this difference between global warming and climate change belief. In a nationally representative survey, 74.4% of respondents identified as Republicans said they believe that climate change is really happening. But only 65%, or 65.5%, let's not undercut it, said they believed in global warming. In contrast,
over half.
Huh? Oh yeah, no, it's the majority of people.
That's good.
Yeah. In contrast, 94% of Democrats believed it was the same question and replied yes to both.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is if you're being scientific about it, it's not the same question. It's the same.
I'm not saying Democrats understand the science either.
Right. That's what I'm saying, is that this is exactly why they started calling it climate change instead of global warming, because there is this person.
Gain 10% of people who say that it's happening. Yes. Says here, it goes on.
How many of those people do you think live on the East Coast where they got snow in May? And that's exactly the problem.
Because it's weather, right?
The globe is heating overall. A changing climate means different things in different places.
Correct. It says here, also goes on to say the Cornell study says some Republicans may discredit climate science because they may not like the policies that have been proposed to address the problem, which I think is sort of interesting. I don't like the solution to, I don't like that my doctor told me to quit smoking, so I'm going to disregard all of the evidence that says smoking is bad.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of like what it is.
My doctor told me I had diabetes, but I'm gonna eat this ho-ho anyway. I don't believe him.
I don't believe in diabetes anymore. I used to until I got diagnosed. Now I'm like, nah, I don't think it's a thing. So, yeah, that's according to co-author Jonathan Schultz, assistant professor of communication at Cornell. Acknowledging the reality of global warming or climate change may lead to new government regulations on businesses, which goes against some core conservative values, Schultz said. So telling a pollster that the phenomenon isn't happening may reflect something about a person's general preferences, not just their level of certainty that the global climate is change. Research is an extension of an earlier study, also written by Schultz. The first study included references to temperature going up versus changing. The new research focuses merely on how labels impact acceptance of climate science in a now more charged political environment.
Well, and this is exactly what I study in my day job when I talk about climate change communication, is about word choice, is about tone, is about the information that you use to frame your conversation, is about metaphors. All these things can be polarizing. So if you pick research tested non-polarizing methods of starting a conversation, people are likely to engage in a good discourse and see the clear chain reaction from cause to result and how to do something about it.
Yeah, and 65.5% of Republicans did indicate that global warming is occurring in these polls, which makes you wonder why the leadership of that party isn't following.
Right. That's the question. If this was representative,
why is the representation or the percentage in that party's leadership so unanimously just about
well, but
the issue?
There's lots of representation issues. I mean, it's not 50% female. It's not racially represent. It's
yeah. There's that.
Ultimately, also potentially, if politicians knew this information, they might change the song they were singing.
I think what they'll do is say, "Hey, we need more talk radio shooting down. We need more to fund more studies that say it's not."
Right. Well,
I think that would probably be is the reason.
Perhaps. All right. Well, moving on. If you've just turned in, you're listening. If you've just turned in this week in science with Justin Jackson and myself, Blair Bazdarich. Do you know what time it is, Justin?
I believe it's time once again for a little segment we like to call Blair's Animal Corner.
That's right.
Do we have bumper music?
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What you got, Blair?
Oh, I have a little something about the intelligence of animals.
Go, you're kidding me.
Yeah, what do you think?
Go figure.
They're smart.
Nah, I think they're just a bunch of dumb animals that just react to their environment like a dumb animal would and don't really think like, a person would.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So let's talk about capuchin monkeys and their ability to learn. Something about their learning experience dependent on age and dependent on different methods available to learn. So wild capuchin monkeys, they chose them because they learn from each other in the wild. So they're a very social species. They observe each other's actions and they will adjust their actions based on what they see other monkeys doing. So we already know this. So they're the perfect species to look at when we want to see how they learn how quickly they learn, what age they learn best at, when they learn from their own experiences versus from other monkeys' experiences. There's a lot of things about learning that we can glean just from a couple of studies with these animals. So a new study from UC Davis looked at looked at capuchin monkeys and their ability to learn how to get inside of a very particular nut. It's from the fruit of the Panama tree. And the nuts inside these fruits, they're protected by a hard shell. That shell is covered in a gooey substance, and it's lined on the inside with stinging hairs.
Ah.
So how do they get into those nuts to eat them? So typically a group of monkeys familiar with the fruit, they would work out their own way to open them. But it makes it hard to figure out how monkeys learned their specific technique. So instead, they found a group of monkeys that had split off from a larger group in 2003 and had moved into an area that had no Panama trees. So most of the monkeys in this group would never have come across this fruit before. So some of the older animals had experience with it, but most of them had no experience at all. They found that overall, most monkeys adopted the most efficient technique for opening the fruit. And this was the method with the highest payoff. They found the most efficient technique spread very quickly through the group in only about 2 weeks. Even older monkeys that had already mastered one technique would end up picking up another that was more efficient by watching others. The monkeys used a mix of learning by observation and individual experience to figure out how to open the fruit. So some of them spent most time, like particularly the older monkeys, spent most time just experimenting and figuring out through their own experience what the best option was for opening the fruit. Younger ones paid more attention to other animals opening the fruit and recognized which was the most beneficial and adopted that technique. A few of the monkeys settled on their own technique, even if it wasn't as efficient as the most efficient technique, but the options they tried were still guided by watching other monkeys. So they showed through this study something called payoff bias learning, which means learning guided by which technique is most efficient. And that this type of learning, payoff bias learning, is most likely more widespread in wild animals than we would have thought. This takes a lot of really complex thought to be able to compare and contrast multiple techniques at once in your brain to think about which way historically and right in this moment got the most food.
Yeah.
With the least work, right? That's a pretty complex thing to think about. Yeah, so this is pretty important just for understanding how smart animals are, but also when considering how to reintroduce animals that were captive bred or have been separated for a long time, or moving a population into a new habitat. When we think about moving a population, like there's a lot of endangered animals that live in areas where their numbers can't grow because it's war-torn or because climate change has completely changed the landscape, all these sorts of things. So either those animals have to be moved or they have to learn how to live in that less than ideal space. So the more we know about how their brain can collect that information quickly and adjust, the better we can set these animals up for success.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know that they're, they can get better at things.
Yeah,
I think that technique, it's like, I think that technique is what helped that our branch, generally speaking, survive as well as we have.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How far back on the branch do you want to go? Because I have another story.
Oh, how far back is that branch?
Well,
wait, say it again.
Deer.
Oh.
So just mammals. Let's just talk about our ancestor that we have in common with all mammals.
Is it deer?
No.
Oh, good. I thought
Because
that would be odd.
this study is focusing on actual deer alive today, or elk rather. But so if we're comparing the way our brain works to the way an elk or a deer, their brain works, either this is a huge amount of convergent evolution across all species over all time, or more likely, our common ancestor a long time ago.
Probably a little
very
shrew.
Complex learning strategies available to them. So let's talk about it. Female elk. What do elk have to worry about, Justin?
Wolves, coyotes, bears, humans.
Humans, yeah.
Oh, it's
Hunting
humans, yeah.
season.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So how do female elk learn to avoid hunters? They find that there's something that happens with female elk where older elk, they're good at surviving. So the question is, are they good at surviving because they've always been good at surviving? And the reason they grew to an older age is because they have always been good at avoiding hunters? Or do they learn over time and that now, because they have reached this advanced age, they have acquired so much knowledge that they are extremely good at avoiding hunters? Which one do you think that it is?
That's a tough question.
If you
So
had asked me before this study was released, I would have said the first one.
they're just more flighty.
They're just more flighty. They're just better at avoiding people. So obviously they survived.
So I'm going to say they've associated the smell of Old Spice with one of the herd disappearing, and therefore pick up on the threat a little sooner maybe than
Well,
others.
you're not that wrong. So a recent study from University of Alberta, Canada, looked at these older female elk, about 10 years old, and noticed that they are pretty much invulnerable to human hunters. They are so good at avoiding hunters that once they reach 10, they're good. They don't have to worry about it again. They're probably not going to get bagged. So they looked at why. They fitted 49 female elk with ages ranging from 1 to 18 years old with GPS collars and tracked them for 2 to 4 years. They also collected data about distance traveled with time, terrain ruggedness, slope, forest cover, all these things to try to figure out exactly how they avoided hunters. The researchers then modeled elk with behaviors that differed amongst individuals but were constant over time in a given individual, as well as elk that could learn to adjust their behavior with age. So basically they made these models of elk that fit these two different to see which was most likely to avoid hunters best. And they found that the older elk actually adjusting their behavior survived best. It looks like learning actually plays a role in shaping their avoidance of hunters over their lifetime. Specifically, older female elk reduced their movement rates. So they were flighty, but they were also good at being kind of stealthy. And they reduced their detectability by being so still. So the likelihood of encountering human hunters went down. This is what also is crazy. Older female elk increased their use of safer grounds, rugged terrain, and forest when they were near roads, where the likelihood of being spotted by hunters is highest. So they recognized, based on where they were in space and time, if they were in kind of a high traffic human area or not. They also found that the elk could differentiate between bow and rifle hunters. They could tell the difference.
Wow.
Older females used rugged terrain more during the season for bow hunting than during that for rifle hunting. So they're actually different times of year. And so this most likely is because bow hunters need to stalk their prey and get pretty close. And that's more difficult on rugged terrain and on sloping terrain. Rifle hunters, however, can shoot far and terrain is less of an issue for them. So the implications here is that the implications are that, first of all, just because an animal lives to a ripe old age does not mean that they have always been good at survival. In this case, it means that they learned over time from experience how best to avoid being eaten. The implications for us as wildlife managers, those implications are that we should not make assumptions that an animal will not learn from previous experience. So when we're thinking about avoidance behavior for animals that are not that we don't have hunting licenses out for example, endangered deer species. If we want to keep them safe and not stressed out, we have to remember that they learn from things that they see. And on top of that, if we want to teach them to avoid certain areas where poachers are, things like that, that is something that we can potentially do if we know that elk have this possibility in them.
Yeah, and I guess it shouldn't be too surprising. This has been a prey species forever. For evolutionary generations, right? So learning about a new predator, learning how to avoid predators is that's the type of learning that they're going to do quicker than anything else, right? And we're just the latest in a long line of predators over the evolutionary ages.
Yeah, and that's actually why I think it's also really important to mention, just because I did bring up hunters. It's really easy for animal lovers like myself to villainize hunters. But hunters have a really important job because we have driven out most of the predators. Here in California, we don't have wolves really, and we definitely don't have any grizzly bears. So coyotes and black bears are not enough to control prey species. So hunters actually help keep species alive by killing a few individuals every year, which is why there's a hunting season.
I think we largely make up for it with the number of cats that we have domestically, but okay.
Cats don't take down deer.
Yeah, no,
but
I know that, but like wolves eat like primarily like field mice, you know.
That's not entirely true, especially the ones that used to be in the northern part of the United States and the ones that are in Canada. They take down elk and deer.
Oh, they do, but primarily they eat mice.
They're still a very important part of the predator-prey relationship. So they're not to be discounted since they are
counting.
But
just counting
anyway, I think it's time.
I think it's time we take a break.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah, it is that time. So we'll be back in a little bit. We are going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more This Week in Science. Did you know that TWIS has merchandise that you might enjoy available? You can go to twis.org and buy some of our swag. We now have a link on our website that goes directly to our Zazzle store. Zazzle is spelled Z-A-Z-Z-L-E. It's so fun to say. Z-A-Z-Z-L-E. So go to twis.org, click on that Zazzle store link in the menu bar, and start buying now. We have things like, cell phone cases. Oh, look, I have one with Blair's Animal Corner art. We have mugs and t-shirts and tote bags and wrapping paper. I really hope to go to a live show someday and see someone with a TWIS Blair's Animal Corner tie on. That is a personal dream of mine. We also have a very popular TWIS trucker hat. Stay tuned for an It's All in Your Head hat. I'm still trying to get that produced. And we have mouse pads and all sorts of fun stuff over at our Zazzle store. So again, go to twis.org and click on the Zazzle button at the top of the screen, and you can start buying all of your TWIS merchandise now. TWIS is supported by listeners like you. Your donations pay for our hosting, bandwidth, contractors we need to hire, and fun things we try to do for the show. For example, going to Philadelphia to the Young Innovators Fair. We appreciate any amount, $2, $5, $10, maybe even $100. You make this show possible. We currently accept donations a couple of ways. First, we have PayPal donation buttons on each show page. And so you can click on that from twis.org, that little PayPal donation button. Or you can go to our Patreon account. So the PayPal donation button is great because it's just a one-time donation of whatever you want to give us. We will take anything. It's all helpful. But if you would like to do something that's kind of like Kickstarter for media producers where you can get stuff in return for your donation and you pay per episode that we make, that's a Patreon account. So that's patreon.com. That's again, Patreon, patreon.com/This Week in Science. And you can sign up for any level that you would like. Whichever your preference, go to the website, listen to the most recent episode, comment on the show, make a donation. It's all helpful. You all help keep this show alive. If you can't afford a donation, you can still help TWIS. We can always use your help to get more people listening and watching TWIS. Use your social networks for science and tell people to tune in to TWIS. So you can go to Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and you can share our statuses, the things that we share out. I know I like to share out Blair's Animal Corner, Animal Science News. We share out the episodes, share those out, or you can make your own personalized shout out. Also, if you listen to us on iTunes, please help us out by posting a review of TWIS and giving the thumbs up to recent reviews that were helpful to you. The ones that are rated most helpful pop up at the top, so the more thumbs up you can give to those TWIS reviews that you agree with, I'm hoping they're positive since you're listening to the show now, then that'll help us reach more people. We just want to get the science to the people. Whatever your support, even if it's just listening to us right now, we thank you so much for all of your support, and we absolutely could not do it without you.
The line of reason shows the way to go. No conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see.
And we're back with more of This Week in Science.
That's right, Justin. What do you have for the show?
What did I bring? What is this? Oh, it's the fishy fossil story.
Ooh, like it smells bad?
This is,
No.
Let's see, where is it? Somewhere. And, oh, yeah, it's a fish I can't, well, is it a fish? Ancient tetrapods, ancestors of humans and all other vertebrates, were thought to have evolved very slowly over long stretches of time, step by step from fish to animals that could actually take steps. Now, an international team of researchers published in Nature reveal new insights into an ancient Scottish snake-like fish fossil that is correcting our understanding of four-limbed evolution.
Snake-like fish fossil?
It's a what?
Snake-like fish fossil?
It's yeah, snake-like fish. So the fossil is called Lithyscus stocki. It's 340 million years old and full of insights, like a snake on the outside, but a fish on the inside, they say. Before the study, ancient tetrapods, ancestors of humans and all modern-day vertebrates, were thought to have evolved that slow process from fish to things with limbs. We used to think that fish to fin was slow evolution to becoming gradually less fish-like, he says. But Lithicus shows immediate dramatic evolutionary experimentation. The lineage shrunk in size and lost limbs almost immediately after they first evolved them. It's like a snake on the outside, but a fish on the inside, which they could see using microcomputer tomography, CT scanners, and advanced computing software. Jason Anderson, paleontologist, professor at the University of Calgary, and study lead author Jason Pardo, doctoral student at the same university, got a close look at the internal anatomy of the fossilized Lithyscus. Excuse me. After reconstructing CT scans, its entire skull was revealed with extraordinary results. The anatomy didn't fit with our expectations, says Pardo. Many body structures didn't make sense in the context of amphibian or reptile anatomy, but the anatomy did make sense when compared to early fish. We could
So,
see
hold
the.
on, a question.
Mhm.
So the indication is that fins did not turn into legs. Fins turned into a snake thing, which then got legs.
No. This is got legs, and then was like, nah, you know what? Don't need them anymore. I'm
Oh.
not going to use them after all. I'm going to do a snaky thing instead.
I'm gonna do a snaky thing. I get it. Okay, proceed.
And then, but they would have they expected the internal evolution of something that had gotten its four limbs to be less fish-like at this point. Like it was happening really slow. But this thing got the legs and then lost them without going to back to fins, but just said, for appendages, forget them. Don't even want them.
Like, actually, scrap that stuff. Who needs
I'm
it?
just gonna wiggle. I like this. This is fun, right? But still was completely in all of that, getting them. Then you're transforming fin to limb to then getting rid of limb. Remained primitive fish-like on the interior.
Wow.
Thanks.
Where on the evolutionary tree is this snaky guy now? What did this
Right.
snaky guy give way to as a result of this odd choice?
So it dropped itself back down into the earliest stages of fin to limb transition, which is kind of where they thought it was. I mean, age-wise should have been,
Right.
but was like kind of confusing how it had evolved and then dropped them already. But basically what they're saying, the speed at which this evolution took place was much quicker than we thought, and was less step by step slow over time. That evolutionary experimentation was happening very rapidly over millions and millions of years, but it's still.
Of course. And so this guy was still aquatic.
So they right, but well, I don't know. Actually, it doesn't say here.
It's like
But,
a
well, it
fish-
must have been. It's all fish parts, right? Yeah. But what was interesting is they thought this was an ancestor of immediate ancestor of tetrapods. But now it's like post tetrapod, but sort of back in deeper. I don't know. They've moved it in place.
Wow, this just raises more questions.
Yeah.
This raises more questions than it answers.
It says they use fossils to calibrate the molecular clock by removing Listicus from the immediate ancestry of modern tetrapods. It changes the calibration date used in these analyses. So it's also going to help them with their biological clock and where they put things. I guess this thing was confusing. They're saying they're removing it from immediate ancestry of tetrapods, because I guess it would have been the earliest, like early tetrapod. But they still put it back in time further. So interesting.
All right, snake on the outside, fish on the inside.
Yep. All fishy parts.
Okie doke. Justin, would you like to hear This Week in the Obvious? The new segment I'd like to start.
We have a few of those each week.
To have This Week in Well Duh.
Yeah.
This is kind of like that. It's about mountain lions. So, do you think human voices might alter mountain lion behavior?
Okay. Do I think human voices would alter their behavior? Yes.
Ding, 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 ding.
Oh.
This Week in the Obvious. Well, a recent study actually took the time to find the actual scientific evidence of whether mountain lions change their behavior based on human voices. So a study from UC Santa Cruz actually went into the Santa Cruz Mountains, and they placed audio equipment at puma kill sites in those mountains. And when a puma came to feed, the movements triggered a motion-activated technology that broadcast recordings of either people talking or Pacific tree frogs. A hidden camera captured the responses. They wanted to see if they would react with fear and flee, or if they came towards the sound, or if they weren't affected by the sound at all. Their findings were they almost always ran away from the sounds of humans and almost never ran from the sound of frogs.
But sometimes
29 only once.
Okay.
Which I think that puma was just very cagey. Just
Yeah.
In 29 experiments involving 17 pumas, the pumas fled in 83% of cases as soon as it heard human voices. That's a lot. And only once upon hearing the frogs. Oh, poor buddy. So before, we have reported on the show about how when pumas are scared away from a kill, then they have to make a new kill. And so actually that increases the amount of kills made in an area by mountain lions if they are often scared away. Bases, right? So this basically just solidifies those results completely. That when you have humans making sound in a space where there's mountain lions, first of all, they're more likely to flee than attack. And second of all, that if they flee and they're at a kill, that means now they have to make a new kill. So they found that pumas, that previous study that we reported on, they increased their kill rates by 36% in areas with high human activity. And now we know exactly why.
So what's interesting about this, and this is like no scientific data to back this up whatsoever, other than just my happening to have, we get joggers get attacked by mountain lions.
Right, because they're jogging.
And well, this is what's interesting. It's almost always jogging alone with headphones, and I've noticed this. I mean, I was like, is it the jogging or is it the headphones? Like, was the puma making noises to scare them off, but they just couldn't hear them because they got the headphones on?
They're not talking because they're jogging. Yeah. They're distracted, but they're also acting like prey.
Sure, but it's also it made me think now with this, the buddy system where you're talking as you jog, carrying on a conversation, you'll be much safer.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're making human sounds, puma don't want to mess with that.
No.
Puma's out. Absolutely. So if you live in the Santa Cruz Mountains, maybe don't go jogging, but also stay on paths. This is the other thing that directly is related to this. If we're concerned about mountain lion population dwindling, which is a problem, and then on top of that, their kill rates going up in specific areas, how do both of those things happen at the same time? One, and two, how do we stop both of those things from happening? Well, it's all related to them being scared away. How do we stop scaring them away from their kills? Well, we have to know where the mountain lions like to hang out. We set up established trails and we keep people on those trails. Then the mountain lions have places to go that hopefully are large enough that they can go be mountain lions and not get scared away by humans. But this definitely does mean that, for example, you could use human voice recordings to keep mountain lions out of a certain space.
Mm-hmm.
That's possible.
There's
but
some
on top
danger
of that,
to that.
You need to study how far the human voice carries, and then include that when you're trying to think about mountain lion habitat. So this is a whole nother thing. I mean, we've talked about sound pollution a bunch on the show, but when you're talking about a habitat or a natural reserve, and you're saying, oh, well, the mountain lions have 50 acres, let's say. Well, what if on 30 of those acres, you can hear people from the trail? Mm-hmm. Lion habitat is actually only 20 acres.
Right. And I think, though, the danger in putting out these human voice talkity things out there in the field to use as a mountain lion or puma deterrent is sort of like if you put fake hunters out there with the deer. They would eventually be unlearning that important thing. It's keeping them away from hunters or keeping pumas away from joggers. You want there to be a jogger, or you want there to be a human with the human voice that's scaring them away. You want that hunter to take down one of that herd for them to continue to be afraid of hunters. If you put a bunch of hunters out there making human sounds, but nothing bad ever happens.
Oh, right. Yes. Desensitization training.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
So that would be my fear
Yeah,
there.
so that's also, yeah, that's a very good point, is that probably is not a great idea. But yeah, in terms of thinking about habitat management and things like that,
If you love nature, stay the heck
number.
away. Stay away. You're a human.
No, that's
You're not
true.
Yes, it's true.
Enjoy nature, but stay on the paths.
Just
Oh
don't
man,
go.
I get so mad if I go hiking with somebody and they start to veer off. I'm like, what are you could be trampling a native plant. Get out of there.
Oh, dear.
I'm oh so fun.
So fun on a hike.
Justin, you have a story for us?
Yeah, this is actually, I think this is a continuation of the new category you've created here of This Week in Obvious. A renewable energy source that has seen a great deal of research and development over the past few decades, maybe ending up as a food source, being eaten rather than transformed into renewable fuel. Recent research into the plant found that its use as a food will be far more valuable economically than as a fuel. Plant produces gorged seed clusters with a surprisingly wide variety of uses as foodstuffs. What do you think this plant is?
If it's in most food, I'm going to go with corn.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes. Monetary terms, according to research, the net social income worth of the plant food production of corn in the U.S. is $604 per acre versus a $4 per acre loss for biofuel production.
So we should be talking about clean corn, is what you're saying.
Just eat the corn. It's food. It's a food thing.
I support clean corn.
It goes on here. Using corn as a fuel source seems to be an easy path to renewable energy, says Richard Yurtik, National Science Foundation Program Director for Critical Zone Observatories. However, this research shows that the environmental costs are much greater and the benefits fewer than simply using corn for food.
Yeah, just eat it.
To compare the energy efficiency and environmental impacts of corn production and processing for food and or for biofuel, researchers inventoried the resources required for corn production and processing and didn't determine the economic environmental impact of using these resources, all defined in terms of energy available and expended and normalized to costs in US dollars. Yeah, and it's never a good idea to turn the thing that you eat and use as a resource in one place as a resource somewhere else anyway, because it creates a competition between two of your resources.
Right.
A little bit. But according to this, yeah, it's still so much more effective to just grow it and sell it for food than it is to go through this whole biofuel process. That I imagine.
A lot of corn. There's corn in everything.
There's corn in everything, and yet it still is that way, that much more useful as that food than it is as. And there's so many places it's grown. But the other thing too is the idea of biofuel is the idea of being sustainable, having a renewable resource, the one that's not going to just get depleted. It's not environmentally friendly in any way. So it was an idea that they've been pushing in states that grow a lot of corn, but overall it looks like no, you're going to have to get an electric car and put up the solar panels on those acres of land, and you'll probably be much better off.
So how long ago was it? I guess it was about 8 years ago when I was an intern. I drove a van that was run on biodiesel, and I couldn't totally understand what the benefit to biodiesel was, because we still paid for biodiesel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the idea was that you could get recycled biodiesel. Like you could pay somebody to pick up grease from a restaurant and then refine it and then but nobody did that. I will say though that the car smelled like French fries.
Did it really? Yeah. That's kind of fun.
So
Why
speaking,
am I hungry again? Can we stop at another fast food place? I just got to get some fries. I don't know why.
speaking of food, I want to talk about probiotics for bees.
Oh,
Probiotics for bees.
good idea.
So bees, we are little bees. Bees, they're in trouble. They're not doing great, and we need them because they're pollinators, right?
Yeah.
And one of the many, many, many problems that bees are having is the toxic effect of pesticides. Just let's remind everyone, honeybees pollinate approximately 35% of our global food, and they contribute an estimated $4.39 billion per year to, in this study, this was from Canada, the Canadian economy alone. So a recent study actually looked at how they could teach bees to be more resistant to pesticides. And they looked at it with probiotics. That's because when these bees get affected by this one pesticide that they were testing on, what it does, neonicotinoids, they actually decimate their microbiota. So their microorganisms just are decimated by this pesticide. So how can they reduce the negative effects of this pesticide? Well, they give them a probiotic. So by administering a strain of probiotic lactobacilli, the same stuff that we have in our Activia and stuff like that, our yogurts.
Yeah, it's in yogurt. Yeah.
Yeah, the survival among fruit flies, which were their model organism for this study, because fruit flies and bees actually have exact identical responses to this pesticide. And so when they administered the probiotic, their exposure to pesticides were less deadly, basically. So when they got this probiotic boost, their immune system was stimulated, and it helped them adapt to infection, heat, and other stresses.
But how are they gonna make the teeny tiny Yoplait containers?
Great question. So the probiotic can actually be easily administered through pollen patties. Pollen patties are actually already used by beekeepers to provide nutritional support and anti-pesticide effects to honeybees. So yeah, so just hobbyists use these pollen patties already. So now they could just plop some probiotics into these pollen patties. They already are a manufactured thing that exists. Bees already go to them. So this is something that could help at least put a Band-Aid on the pollinator situation as a result of pesticides. We could also just maybe stop using the pesticides, but that's just me. So for the meantime, probiotic pollen patties. Probiotic pollen patties. Do you have any more stories, Justin?
I thought that I did, but I don't see any more in the rundown. Hang on a second.
Okay. Well, while you're looking, I'll tell my last story of the night.
Oh, okay.
And it's about cuttlefish. Yay. Everyone knows I'm a cephal enthusiast. And it's been too long since I've talked about a cephalopod on the show. So when I heard a recent study about cuttlefish camouflage, I had to bring it to our attention today. We've talked a lot about cephalopod camouflage and how they have the ability through chromatophores to change their color and even flash to communicate and stuff like that. Well, they also can change their texture. And so I want to see if I can screen share. Hopefully my computer won't explode because I'm asking so much of it right now. We'll see. Oh, it's thinking. But this cuttlefish actually does something that we have not really seen very wild. They use their camouflage to blend in with the background. But this little pharaoh cuttlefish, see if it'll go. I think it's going to happen. Yes. This little pharaoh cuttlefish, maybe, actually mimics hermit crabs. So the way that they, here we go. The way, let's turn that down. So the way that they puff up, they look just like a crab, and they can kind of antagonize one another and look like something you don't want to get up close to. So they look like they have a shell, their coloration changes, they look, and they stick their two little tentacles up like little antennae on a crab, and they darken part of that tentacle so it looks like eyes. It looks perfect.
So yeah, when you first pulled that up, I thought they were like, first we'll show you what a crab looks like.
Right. Now look at this guy crawl too, just like a crab.
It's just, that's amazing.
This is what is crazy too. So they saw this in the wild. Then they took some eggs and they brought them into the lab. And they raised these cuttlefish where they had never seen a crab in their entire lives. And they still exhibited this behavior.
Wow.
So how do they know what a crab looks like?
Genetic memory.
Yeah, so the two theories are either some sort of genetic memory, or this theory seems crazy to me. They observed crustaceans and learned this behavior during their embryonic stage when they were in the egg.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
wow. Now that's getting a head start on your education right there.
Yes. Crazy camouflaging cuttlefish. Do you have any more stories, Justin?
I got one more, and I didn't have this one prepared, but I'm going to go through it anyway because it's. I really want to know what happens. So this is, where is this? This is from Tel Aviv University. It says here, although multitasking is a popular buzzword, research shows that only 2% of the population actually multitasks efficiently. Most of us just shift back and forth between different tasks, a process that requires our brains to refocus time and time again, reducing overall productivity by about 40%. So as many people as there are who are trying to multitask are just doing two things badly, I guess.
I bet. I'm not surprised by that at all.
But the Tel Aviv University research identifies a brain mechanism that enables more efficient multitasking. And the key to this is reactivating the learned memory, a process that allows a person to more efficiently learn or engage in two tasks in close conjunction. Quote voice of Dr. Nitzan, censor of the university's School of Psychological Sciences. The mechanism may have far-reaching implications for the improvement of learning and memory functions in daily life. It also has clinical implications. It may support rehabilitation efforts following brain traumas that may impact motor and memory functions of patients, for example. When we learn a new task, we have great difficulty performing it and learning something else at the same time. For example, performing a motor task A, say with one hand, can reduce performance in the second task, such as performing a different task with the other hand. That's sort of like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time, right? Which I can do amazingly well that way, but have a little bit more difficulty the other way. But still, I can do both. I might be, maybe I am one of the 2%. I can also chew bubble gum and walk and talk at the same time, but I don't really like gum, so I don't do it very often.
That's why.
It says this is due to interference between the two tasks, which compete for the same brain resources. Dr. Sensor says, our research demonstrates that a brief reactivation of a single learned memory in appropriate conditions enables the long-term preservation of or immunity to future interference in the performance of another task performed in close conjunction. Researchers first taught student volunteers to perform a sequence of motor finger movements with one hand by learning to tap onto a keypad, a specific string of digits appearing on a computer screen as quickly and accurately as possible. After acquiring this learned motor memory, the memory was reactivated on a different day, during which the participants were required to briefly engage with the task, this time with an additional brief exposure to the same motor task performed with their other hand. By utilizing the memory reactivation paradigm, the subjects were able to perform the 2 tasks without interference. By uniquely pairing the brief reactivation of the original memory with the exposure to a new memory, long-term immunity to future interference was created, demonstrating a prevention of interference even a month after the exposures. Well, and that one, it almost is like, I immediately thought of like somebody playing piano, right? Like you're doing a one-hand task and now you're doing another task on the other hand. I kind of,
I don't know.
that's like a,
that's kind of different though, because that's your 2 hands are doing different things, but it's to accomplish one task. Like it's now if you were trying to play piano and eat a sandwich.
right. Yeah. That's what I mean though. That's what I mean. That's what I guess I'm sort of saying their test, which was doing a digit thing on the other hand.
Yeah.
It's not too surprising that humans can multitask that. I've seen people play piano.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I would agree that this is kind of a faulty test method, because that is very much when I play the saxophone, my 2 hands are doing completely different things while I'm blowing air out in a specific way, while I might be tapping my foot, but all those things are actually related to one thing.
Right. Although to be fair, if you to their point, I guess that what's allowing you to multitask is the practice and the muscle memory, and that you're not introducing a new task now. Well, then one of them is just relied on as a long-term memory already established, and then the second hand is, and so is the adding air.
What I'm taking issue with then, I guess.
But could you do that and eat a sandwich?
Right, exactly. So is the definition of the term kind of multitask. I would not call playing an instrument multitasking.
Yeah.
Personally, because you're telling that person play a D. They're not thinking, okay, I'm going to put 3 of my fingers here and 3 of my fingers here and blow out. And so they're not thinking about that. They're thinking play a D, which is
maybe that is the point of the study, is that once you've put one of them into a long-term memory thing, then you can rely on it to not be interfering with a new task.
Right,
so
but that's still I'm arguing that that's still a singular task. What makes it a multitask is driving and eating. Those are both things that you're going to do separately and together.
But I've practiced both eating and driving enough.
Exactly. So if that's
flawless at it.
If that's what the test is, that's one thing. But if the test is to do 2 different things with your hand in the same way, always the same time, that's not really
not a great test unless it's the first time you've done it. And I think that's the point. I think that's the point of this, is that multitasking in their paradigm, when you get sort of the competing thing going on in the brain, is when you're doing a new task, which when you think about like a conversation, like talking on the phone and doing something, one should be, the conversation that you're having is in a way always a new task. It's not the same exact conversation usually that you've just had moments before, or the day before, or the month before. And so talking on the phone while trying to play saxophone, well, obviously saxophone stuff because you're using your mouth there, but while playing piano and having a conversation might be a difficult thing when your brain is actively having to think about the question that was just put before you, or how to respond to something somebody said.
Right.
But if you were singing a song that you've memorized that goes along with it, that's part of that one task and just another element, that seems like that would be easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. All right, Justin, do you think we did a show?
I think we're at the end of it in any case.
Alrighty, well then I think you know what time it is. I'm going to try to duplicate something that Kiki does, and there's no way I'm going to be able to do this without stopping. But it's time for our shout outs.
Patreons.
Yes. So I am going to attempt now.
Can we try? We could do either or, like every other one.
No. That's absolutely not going to work. All right, here we go. Thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Chris Clark, Paul Disney, Steve Burton, or John Ratnaswamy, Richard Owens, Byron Lee, E.O., Kevin Perichan, Tyron Fong, Andy Grohl, Keith Corsell, Jake Jones, Charlene Henry, Brian Hendrick, John Gridley, Steve McKell, Kevin Railsback, Gerald Sorrell, Ulysses Adkins, Dave Friedel, James Randall, Bob Calder, Mark Zaros, Ed Dyer, Trainer84, Layla, Marshall Clark, Larry Garcia, Randy Mazuka, Tony Steele, Gerald Onyago, Steve DeBell, Greg Gutham, Patrick Kahn, Ksenia Volkova, Daryl, Haroon Sarang, Alex Wilson, Jason S. Schneiderman, Dave Neighbor, Jason Dozier, Matthew Litwin, Eric Knapp, Jason Roberts, Richard Porter, Rodney, David Wiley, Robert Aston, Brendan Minish, Dale Bryant, Aurora Lee, Todd Northcutt, Arlene Moss, Bill Kersey, Ben Rothig, Darwin Hannon, Rudy Garcia, Felix Alvarez, Brian Hone, Orly Radio, Brian Condren, Mark, Nathan Greco, Hexator, Mitch Neves, Flying Out, John G. Croker, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom Shuwata, Dave Wilkinson, Steve Mashinsky, Rick Ramos, Gary Swinsberg, Phil Nadeau, Braxton Howard, Selgood Sam, Matt Sutter, Emma Grenier, Philip Shane, James Dobson, Kurt Larson, Stefan Insom, Honey Moss, Mountain Sloth, Jim Trapeau, John Maloney, Jason Olds, James, Paul West, Alex Doty, Illuma Lama, Joe Wheeler, Dougal Campbell, Craig Porter, Adam Mishkon, Aaron Luthen, Marjory, David Simmerly, Tyler Harrison, and Columbo Ahmed. Thank you to our Patreon sponsors. We could not do it without you. And now I need to stop sharing. If you're interested in supporting us and getting your name added to that list so that Kiki or myself can butcher it at a later date, you can find information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Also remember that you can help us out simply by telling your friends about TWIS. On next week's show, we will have an interview. We'll be talking with British neuroscientist Adrian Owen about the science of brain injury and vegetative states. Once again, we will be broadcasting live online at 8 p.m. Pacific time on twist.org/live, where you can watch and join our chat room. But if you can't make it, don't worry. You can always find our past episodes at youtube.com/thisweekinscience or twist.org.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory. Or if you have one of those mobile type devices, you can look up TWIS, the number 4 Droid app in the Android marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple marketplacey.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twist.org. We can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts and other listeners.
Yes, or if that's too much to do, you can always contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair Baz at twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science with only one S in there, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We will be back here next week with Kiki, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And this week in science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's this week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This week in science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's this week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. 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 This week in 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 science.
And that was another episode of This Week in Science.
We did it.
All right, Blair, I'm going to let you go because I know you're sick.
Yeah.
Recover, get your voice back.
Is there anything you wanted to talk about before we go?
Nah.
No.
Did you have anything?
Uh.
I got that. I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, you're gonna. You can. If I leave, it'll die.
No. I didn't mean that. I mean, I meant I was gonna not hold you to a length of time.
If I leave, we all die.
But I can hang out. Yeah. Okay.
No, I should go.
Fine.
Can
Good night, Blair.
That I should go right now.
No, I was saying, yeah, you're not feeling good. Go rest. Like, get better.
Yeah.
That's all I was saying.
Go to work today.
You didn't?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Get some rest.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week back here. Same science time, same science station.
Yeah, hopefully I'll have a full voice by then. You sure heard me yesterday.
You didn't sound too bad.
Oh,
I mean, you didn't sound bad at all, actually.
Yesterday, I had zero voice.
Wow. That's always fun.
Talking like this yesterday. And then I was about to text you and Kiki and be like, I'm hoping I'll have a voice tomorrow, but...
And then Kiki beat you to it with that. I'm not going to be around.
And Kiki's like, can you host the show? I was like, I guess.
Blair finally gets a big break, hosting This Week in Science on her own, and then her voice gave out.
And she was a half an hour because she was
actually
around the back end of Google Plus instead of YouTube to start the Sassafras and Hangout. Because why would the Google Hangout be in Google? It has to be in YouTube. Duh.
Because it's not a Google thing. It's a YouTube thing now.
No, but YouTube is a Google thing now.
I thought Google was. Oh yeah, no, you're right.
So that's why it's
Right.
just the Google
No,
Hangout.
no,
Like
wait,
I
no.
thought that it would be.
Google Hangouts is now a YouTube thing.
No,
Wait,
YouTube was acquired by
what?
Google. All of
Okay.
YouTube was acquired by Google,
Okay, I don't know
which
how.
is
these
why
things work.
now Google Hangouts on air broadcasting to YouTube, like it already did that, but now it's like much more intertwined than it ever was before. But so it used to be like even maybe it's probably 2 times ago when I started the show. It was still through Google Plus that you started the show. And then I tried to find it in YouTube and I got lost. And then I like tried to find it in Google and got even more lost in the interwebs. It was very upsetting. I was so lost in the webs, in all those tubes, in the series of tubes. There was no way through and no way out. But I figured it out. Just 20 minutes late. Sorry, Kiki. I know I'm fired.
Well, if there was anybody else who could run the show, maybe. But seeing
So
as how it was you or nothing.
that's my job security. That's okay.
My idiocy with computers, my being a complete Luddite, absolute job security.
Well, also my 2011 MacBook Pro was like trying to not have it.
Yeah.
It was like, you want me to do what now? I'm 6 years old. In computer years, that's like 150.
Actually, I think no, the computer I'm running on isn't that. It's maybe
How do you like your Chromebook?
Oh, actually, I used it for that weekend.
Uh-huh. Did you return it?
No. I gave it to my daughter.
Oh, you gave it to your daughter. That's good.
Yeah, she does some schoolwork stuff on there. Plus, it's handy because then, like, multiple kids in the house during the summer here. There's like one YouTube or Netflix that shows up on the television, and if the kids don't agree, now I can be like, "Hey, can't you go just watch it on your personal device?" And they're like, "Oh, that's fun." And I got her headphones and a little mic like built into it, so she can do.
Did you put a TWIS sticker on there?
No, I didn't. I don't have any stickers.
That's not true.
I got patches, is what I have. I have the patches.
You don't have any stickers? You could have had some when we were.
I didn't think about it. I didn't think, oh, I've got something, but I've got like 4 patches. Like there's my travel luggage, my camera bag. I don't know where it is though. I did get the tote. The tote came, so I got a whole tote I can take to the store with This Week in Science on it. And of course, this is by far the most efficient mouse pad I've ever had. The mouse just glides over the surface.
Yeah, I got a mouse pad through Zazzle too, but with the toad on it. And I have that at work now. I love it.
Ooh, a toad bag.
Yeah, toad bag.
Toad bag.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Toad bag. Okay, I'm gonna go.
All right. Oh, that's great. You added another yawn to the compilation that we're building.
Good.
Blair yawns. Blair yawns on camera. Compilation.
Blair's yawns.
I'm gonna do it.
Let me finish.
But I just wanted to. I was just gonna say. I just wanted to.
Yeah, those.
Let me finish.
Do you think she likes it when I do weird alternate endings? Or do you think she doesn't? I can't tell.
What do you mean weird alternate endings? What do you mean?
Like scripted back and forth at the end of the show.
Oh.
You know how sometimes I kind of go off a little bit off the rails with it?
I
think it's fun because, like, why keep listening, right? If it's gonna be
I don't think I've ever read it as it's written.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like a guideline.
Like I bring in stuff from the show that we talked about.
Yeah. No, that's all. It's all
Well, when she edits this episode, she'll get to hear this and then tell us. Kiki, tell me what you think.
She won't listen to the whole show. She's too busy.
Well, now we'll know. Kiki,
Yeah, well,
tell us what you think.
I think we busted her once. I think we busted her one time where we did a show, and then she came back the next week and had a story that we had covered.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, that's interesting. And then did this happen? She's like, yeah, that's what they found. And you're like, oh, and then did they see this? She's like, yeah. And we're like, oh, but we never mentioned it.
We didn't? Oh, no.
We might have in the after show, but we didn't during the show. We just let the story roll. Like, all right, we're in. Let's see. Maybe she's got a different take on it. We'll see.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Okay, that's 3 ounce. That's enough. Okay,
Okay.
good night. Say good night, Blair.
Thanks for stopping by.
See you next week.